Hey everyone, Coach Powers here, and I wanted to ask you guys a question. Can the brain make new neurons? A process also known as neurogenesis. Think about that for a second. Can the brain make new neurons? And also, what is the implication of this question as it regards to benzo recovery? Now, we used to think the answer was no. That at least after a certain point, in our development, after a certain age, usually by adulthood, the brain sort of turned off its ability to make new neurons. And you might recall this even in school. They would, when they talked about underage drinking, for example, they would always say something like, you only have a certain amount of neurons, and drinking kills brain cells, and once you lose them, you don't get it back. At least that's what we used to think. And we thought this for many years. It wasn't until recently, I think probably the last 20 years, with new developments in neuroscience and neuroscience imaging, that we've learned, no, that's actually not true. At least it doesn't have to be true. We've come a long way in our understanding of neuroplasticity. And now what we know is that the brain can actually grow potentially thousands of new neurons every day. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Specifically, now not everywhere. We don't know if it grows everywhere in the brain yet, but specifically in the hippocampus, which is kind of associated with learning and memory. It does a lot of other features. It's also part of the limbic system, which you hear me talk about a lot. In fact, the main parts that grow, that regrow in terms of neuroplasticity in the brain is part of the limbic system, 3 of the 4 components of limbic system. So we have the hippocampus, the learning and memory center, essentially, the amygdala, which is the emotional processing part of the brain, which also includes the brain's ability to sort of interpret fear and threatening stimuli, right? So it's pretty central to that fight or flight center. And the hypothalamus, which kind of is the command center of the fight or flight center. It's what activates that sympathetic nervous system. So think about that again now for, the implications just on benzo recovery, which we haven't done any studies that I know of anyway on neuroplasticity and new neurons, neurogenesis in regards to brain damage or brain injuries coming from benzodiazepines. But you can see it's there. The implication is there. So this is fascinating. Each one of us can actually directly help our brains grow. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about how. And essentially what we're understanding now, what we've been studying is this substance called BDNF, which means brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's been kind of called the miracle grow of the brain because it sort of helps, like miracle grow on a plant. It helps it grow and flourish. So this BDNF substance has some wonderful effects on the brain. For one, as I'm saying, it does increase plasticity, but what it also does is it suppresses brain-damaging neuroinflammation. Now, part of the stress response on the body is inflammation. It is, and inflammation is damaging, which also our brain creates a lot of cortisol to try to fight that inflammation. So this is great. It increases neuroplasticity, but it also suppresses brain damage that happens as neuroinflammation. Now, stress has a inflammatory effect on the brain and the body. And this substance, this BDNF, actually helps repair and reduce the effects of stress on the brain. Pretty incredible, right? Further, it protects the brain against degenerative diseases like dementia, which is another big side effect. Well, I wouldn't say a big side effect, but it's a risk associated with long, heavy use of benzos. We're always worried about memory loss and the impacts on the brain. Well, this substance actually helps protect the brain against degenerative diseases like dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. But it does more than that. It can help repair and protect against depression, epilepsy, stroke, damage from traumatic brain injuries, and damage from substance use, which is all those things sort of overlap gently with the process of coming off benzos, right? You can sort of look at it as a damage induced from substance use, but not in the same way as like binge drinking, but still it's there. Okay, so I've said a few words here about this incredible substance, BDNF, and how it regenerates cells, and specifically in the limbic system. The question now is, how do we access it? And one method outside of several other neuroplasticity factors is exercise, guys. I mean, you hear me talk about exercise constantly. It's one of my main staples in my recovery program. Exercise increases the BDNF. And so you might ask yourself, how much exercise? Do I have to, do crazy rigorous amounts of exercise? Because I can't do that in benzo recovery. No, the answer is as little as 10 minutes of aerobic exercise, walking. 10, 15 minutes. Again, one of my staples in my program. First thing I have my clients start to do, walk 5, 10, 15 minutes every morning. Now, of course, the longer the better. The studies show that around 40 minutes of, moderate walking speed, a moderate level of intensity, it's going to produce the best, the more of the BDNF. So I want to reiterate, BDNF, amazing substance in the brain, regrows, heals, repairs the brain, and it can be increased by exercise. Now, conversely, a lack of exercise puts the body in a deconditioned state, which results in the exact opposite. This produces less BDNF. This results in the brain actually beginning to sort of break down, and the brain actually shrinks. Parts of it become dormant, and it starts to age faster, becomes more susceptible to inflammation, and its ability to handle stress is greatly diminished. All right, so of course, the takeaway here, guys, is if you're suffering through benzo withdrawal and you're looking for something that can help regrow your brain, quite literally regrow your brain, and not just by creating new synapses and new neurons, but actually strengthening the communication between the cells, which means the chemical that you have, the GABA that is there, right? Because yes, you're obviously your brain's injured. You have a great reduction of GABA in the brain. GABA receptors are injured. This is how you can increase these receptors, but also the communication of the existing chemistry like GABA, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine. These things also have an amazing impact on the brain as well. So there you have it. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on exercise and the potential ability to create neurogenesis in your brain? Leave me a comment. Let me know if you like this video. If you found it useful or interesting, please hit the like button and let me know. Keep your heads up, guys. You are healing. You will heal. Everybody heals.